and Security Center, they basically refer to the same product. It's just that Security Center was former. So Tenable.sc is basically a vulnerability management and assessment tool that will help you prioritize systems that need to be addressed by revealing the criticality levels of the vulnerabilities found and which ones have known exploits available. So there has been some confusion amongst people about the differences between some of the products Tenable offers, between Tenable Core, Nessus, and Tenable.sc. I mean, since they are offered from the same company and since they are all required in order to work with our Tenable.sc server, it's understandable why we have this confusion. So what Nessus is the actual vulnerability scanner. This is deployed using Tenable Core, which is a virtual appliance built on CentOS. So once you install Tenable Core onto your box, you'll be able to launch your Nessus scanner. Now, once you have your Nessus scanner online, what you do is you just allow traffic from your Tenable server on the cloud, or sorry, I should say our Tenable server on the cloud. And you want to keep traffic open from our server to yours on port 8834. So all the scans you run will be from this, will be from this address on Tenable.sc. So this is where we have all our vulnerability management tools. The Nessus scanner will just give you scan results, which you can't really do much with. So here we have some basic Tenable.sc terminology. Scan zones are basically IP ranges and subnets that we add for your school or district. A repository is a database of vulnerability data defined by one or more ranges of IP addresses. Organization, this will be your college or district. You basically get to manage users under your organization and get to choose which resources they have access to. We also have asset lists. These are just a group of hosts or devices that meet a certain criteria.
I'm reminding you, check email.
When you scan with
check email.
which ports are open on the system you're scanning, what's running on the system, things like programs, Microsoft Word, Excel, and it'll find if you have an outdated version, it'll tell you, and then it'll tell you what vulnerabilities are available. And then it'll also tell you if there's exploits available for those vulnerabilities. So there are 4 key pieces when putting a scan together. So let's go through each of these. So number 1, we have scan policy. This is where we tell Security Center and Nessus what to do while scanning. And then this is done by defining plugins for policy that I'll talk about in more detail later. Next, we have targets. This tells Nessus what IP ranges, subnets, or assets to scan. Third, we have repositories. And as I mentioned before, these are essentially databases for a specific organization's scan data to be stored on. Each campus has its own repository where we define IP ranges and subnets to scan. If you try scanning outside those defined addresses, you will not get results back. And then finally, we have credentials, where you configure the scanner to use authentication credentials during scanning. This allows for a more intrusive scan and gives you more results, but it requires knowing the Active Directory credentials of the account boxes you're scanning. So as I briefly mentioned before, scan policies consist of plugins. Now what plugins basically do is they tell Tenable how to scan and what to look for during a scan. And then Tenable has engineers that crank out plugin updates on a daily basis. And then if you want to find out more about updates, we can go to Tenable.com/ All right, so this website basically provides a broad overview of the different plugins Tenable updates on a nightly basis. So we're gonna head over to Nessus families. And then you'll see we have about 20 plus families of plugins that are defined. And if you take a look at the right side of this list, you see some are really large while others are significantly smaller. So what our installation of Security Center does every night is that it talks to the Tenable's official database here. It asks what new plugins have been uploaded on their end. It pulls it down, and then it pushes all those updates to all the Nessus scanners for each campus. Now here, this is just a screenshot of how policies are defined within Tenable and how you can set them. So we have, by default, we have basic. Oh, stop. Sorry about that. So basically, basic will do a complete scan over your defined host and then look for vulnerabilities. Discover scans will ping defined hosts and assets to just see if they're live, but it won't look for vulnerabilities. And then we have the blue key RDP scan. This is just sitting in there. This is actually old vulnerability released last year by Microsoft for remote desktop protocol devices. Now the reason we actually recommend doing discovery scans first, and the reason for this is that it doesn't count against our IP license. Although licenses are only taken up if hosts are live in any scan, and we're nowhere near a shortage of IP ranges or licenses, I should say. It's better to run a scan with the discovery policy first. Now, the reason for this is because you want to reduce the amount of time it takes to complete a scan and the activity on your network. So it's recommended to find out first which hosts are live and then perform the basic scan where you're actually scanning for vulnerabilities over just a live host and not an entire network. Just going to show a demo of how to access the scan policy in Tenable. Just going to head over to scans on the top. We're going to go to policies. And then we already have these predefined ones I talked about. But if you want to add your own, you just hit add. And then you have basic pre-built ones that Tenable provides for us. So do malware scan. Now here I'm just going to give it a name. Basic malware. Simulation. Then I have different options to play with here. So once I hit submit, I'll be able to see it on my list of when I'm trying to set up a scan. Okay. Versus scan targets. So there are 4 types of targets you can define for a scan. And the first one is IPv4 hosts. These can be provided as a single host, multiple hosts under a valid IP range, or hosts within a subnet using CIDR notation. The second type of target is IPv6. So while you can use IPv6 addresses, we don't recommend them for reasons I'll get into later. The third type you could define as hostname. You can provide this as a web address or a DNS server. And then the final type of target we have are assets. Now, assets are just basically devices, such as an operating system. So you can actually just scan for operating systems within your network and then find out which ones are outdated, like this one, Windows Server 2003. And then you could figure out how you want to go around updating them. So targets, you basically define here. So here I'm just going to use the IP range. And you have to select the scan zone repository for your respective campus first. And also get the scanning name. Just call this scan. Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk about scheduling scans. So before you go over this, you might ask when the best time is to schedule. Well, for most colleges and district offices, this will be at night when network traffic should be at its lowest point over a 24-hour period. So as with any system administration software, we want to encourage automating things and avoid manual configurations. So for this reason, the options now and once when scheduling the scan are not a good choice, because after the scan completes, it doesn't reappear in the list, and then you have to manually go back and reconfigure that scan. So I would recommend using daily or weekly. So also, depending on the scope of the scan you defined, they can scan new endpoints added to a network. So this will save time instead of manually making changes in the scan settings. So I'm schedule scan. Just gonna go back to my test scan here. On the bottom, I have schedule. Go to on demand and change that to, let's say, daily. And then I would do this at night. And let's repeat every one day. Okay. Now you have different sort of types of scans when you schedule. So the first one is by date. So for example, at every 6th of the month, you can schedule a scan to run at 14 military time. I think that's 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The other way you could do this is to schedule on a specific day of a week. So this example here, we're scheduling for first of Tuesday every month at 10 a.m. So on demand, that option will basically initiate the scan once you see manually launch it. And finally, we have dependent scans. And these launch after you complete a scheduled scan again. So how these dependent scans work is that they can be useful in certain circumstances where you want to build up a chain of scans. So basically, when one scheduled scan finishes, the dependent scan will start up after. And the scan schedule demo, I already went through that. It's very easy to do. You just go to your act. So when starting out, you want to go to top, hit active scans. You could change a scan you already have created, or you could just add a new one. And then you just go here and set whatever time you feel comfortable with. Or rollover scans. So you can schedule a rollover scan for the next day, although it's not recommended doing this. So basically what happens is, if your scan fails to complete, let's say you set a scan window of 4 hours and it'll take longer to complete in that specified time. In this case, and the scan will appear in the list of scans, and you have the option to either let it continue once it fails or just throw the results away. So how you schedule a rollover. So scheduling a rollover is actually found under settings of an active scan, rollover schedule. You could do it same time next day, but I've seen examples where admins who don't log into Tenable often had a scan that continued to fail. It rolled over again, and then it kept on failing to complete. So the result was there were hundreds of scans that had to be removed manually one by one, listed on the scan menu. So we also have a lot of other settings available. Let's say you're working with workstations that are using DHCP. You might want to turn on track You might want to turn on track hosts to not only track by IP address, but also get the DNS name and MAC address of the host you're scanning. Now, if you're running a web server, scan virtual host might be a good choice. So if you have hosts that fail to reply to a scanner's ping request, let's say you removed a box from your network, its vulnerabilities in the cumulative database of scan results will be removed. So this is a good option when you're actively using Tenable to find outdated and vulnerable devices on your network to remove, and you're actively removing them. So these are how the options would look like in Tenable setting up a scan. So notice that there is an option to terminate a scan after a number of hours selected from the drop-down menu here. So I recommend doing this if you schedule your scans at night to avoid having large network traffic. Ideally, you would want to schedule it so that it terminates once business hours start. And I can show you this in Tenable.sc. You just go to one of your scans, go to settings, and define the max hours to scan here. Just gonna set that up for you. All right, so there also is the capacity at the end of a scan to run and generate a report. I'm going to talk about this in more detail later. So post-scan reports. Here you can see we have multiple reports of the same kind. So what happened here was that multiple users generated a pre-configured report template provided by Tenable, and they forgot to change the default name when they did so. So that's why you see duplicates of these. And that's something to keep in mind to avoid confusion amongst your security managers. So in Tenable.sc, you go to your scan. On this left-hand menu, you go to post scan, add report. And then you go ahead and submit. Please commit changes. Well, you have to hit that little check mark on the side. Okay, now that works. All right, some considerations when scanning. So number one is to start small. If you're doing something new, it's best to just start with one box. There are a number of downsides to scanning a whole bunch of boxes and saying, well, gee, I wonder how this works. So, I mean, the first problem you're going to have is it's going to bring back a lot of information at once, and it's typically too much to read. So you want to be able to see what the scanner found and see what's normal, and also see if any anomalies occur with the devices you're scanning. Well, number two, you always want to exercise caution before running and scheduling scans. So let's say you're not the owner of the asset you want to scan. You're trying to scan some public server you don't own that's hosted by another company. And you should consult the appropriate admin first and let them know that you want to perform security scans. The asset owner will understand better when boxes are not that busy, what times to avoid doing scans, and during what times there are a lot of business activity. So you also want to avoid running scans when there's another scheduled task performed on the box or boxes. For example, backups are a bad time to be doing security checks due to the load on a box. To help ease with these concerns, there is a capability called blackout windows. So what this does is it prevents any scans to start on the specified host during a defined time frame. It is useful to do this to prevent accidentally scheduling a scan on some sensitive device. So the way you do this is starting back from the beginning, you go to scans, blackout windows, and drop-down menu. I can define one here, so I want to make sure it's enabled. I'm just going to all systems. And just as an example, I'm just going to leave this as default. So here I could set the time I specified to repeat for each day of the week if I wanted to. I'm just going to do that just today. Okay. So basically, even if I have a scan scheduled for this time, it's not going to start because it was a blackout window. So another capability we have on Tenable is called safe checks. So safe checks do not allow the scanner to exercise vulnerabilities. In other words, it doesn't enable the scan plugins we talked about in order to do any sort of intrusive checking, which can be disruptive to your network and host on there as well. The best time to disable this option and scan without safe checks is when you're first building systems, since you haven't deployed them yet and there's no production load on them, and there's also nobody using them. In other cases where you want to run more aggressive scans without those safe checks, what you can do is you can either clone the box if it's a physical box, or if it's a virtual machine that you're scanning, you can also just copy that over and scan that when it doesn't have any load on it or nobody's using it. So all the plugins Tenable uses by default has safe checks enabled. So if you want to go ahead and disable scanning safe checks, what you're going to do is go to policies. And the default ones already have them. I'm just going to use this as an example. So when you're creating your own scan policy and you want to disable these safe checks, you want to head over to advanced and get rid of this option here. Oh, I had to provide a name. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, scanning with IPv6 is a little problematic. Now, Security Center works with both IPv4 and IPv6, and I think all of us here are using IPv4. The key issue with IPv6 is that because the address space is so huge, you can't scan by subnet range, and it just takes too long and requires using another network monitoring tool to ensure that you've actually scanned those hosts. Now, if you do go ahead and scan IPv6 addresses, you would have to create a separate repository for those. All right, well, I actually didn't run a scan, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Show you how it works. So to run a scan that I've already defined, I just press the create button here on the right side. Now you're not going to see any error here, and a lot of people are confused by this. So in order to actually see what your scan is doing, you have to head over to scan results. And you'll see I just started. So this is going to take a while, so I'm just going to show you one that's already completed. So once you've completed a scan and you click on its results, it's going to give you an analysis of vulnerabilities that I'm going to talk about later. So that's how you check if a scan ran properly. You look at the results, make sure there's no anomalies. And then I'm also going to talk about how you can prepare a report based on your completed scans. So scan results are viewable by all members of your organization, and individuals with proper access can launch, pause, or stop any of the scans you create. Or templates. So we've already picked up that there are a lot of tools and options within Tenable.sc. To help with that, there are a number of resources pre-configured for us to help us implement scans and vulnerability scanning. So we already saw a few templates already there for scan policies. The most detailed templates are found with the dashboard and report cards. And those are ones that you want to use templates for, since there's a lot of information. Building these two from scratch could take hours, and it could involve a variety of testing as well. So basically, templates allow us to obtain useful information from scans with only minutes of configuring. So now the question is, how do we find templates? Well, there's three ways. Well, some are stored into categories. We can look at them that way, and then specifically asset sets and dashboards and reports, we can take a look at getting started. So say for an asset, well, I haven't gone over assets yet, but all you would do is just take a look at the default ones, and these should be good. Now, the most common way to find a template is to type a keyword in the appropriate menu of the tool we're using. And very typically, we get lots of results. So keywords include vulnerabilities, assets, users, compliance, NIST, CIS, critical security controls, CSC. So once you look in there, you'll see we have lots and lots of offerings. Right. Well, when you select templates for a dashboard, it actually takes you into a dialog so you can scope it the way you want. There are two things you can include in that. You can select your focus, and that will fall under which systems you want to target. And when you do want your dashboard to update, typically this correlates with your scan schedules. For example, if you're scanning during the weekend, you want to set your dashboard to update at the end of the weekend. If you're scanning nightly, you can also set it to update right before business hours. So when you walk into the morning and you log in, you're looking at fresh data. So Security Center updates its list of templates from the Tenable database, but it doesn't do this as often as plugin updates that occur nightly. So I'm going to show you how to add a dashboard template. So you want to go over options. And then under options, you hit add dashboard. So you have some pre-configured ones as well. If you want to look for something specific, you just type in, a security keyword. So I could look at NIST. And then I have a bunch of NIST related dashboards. In CIS. Now basically if I select one of these, it's going to frame all the vulnerability data from scans in terms of in the standard here. So I'm going to target all systems. 1, 2. Schedule update at these times. And then here you have a detailed description of what the dashboard is. So I'm going to hit add. So when you first do this, it does take some time to load all the dashboards, and some of them may say they never update. You just want to hit refresh, and usually it shows up right away. I also have another one for continuous vulnerability management here from CIS controls. So all this information is pulled from the scans we complete. Right, assets. So basically, I've talked about assets, but you still might be confused as to what they exactly are. They're just a list. They're just devices, basically. A server, desktop, laptop, tablet, phone. Those are all assets. So you can share assets with the users based on local policy requirements as well. Now, when you set up a scan, you go to active scans, just go to test scan. So here, instead of targeting by under an IP range, I can target by an asset, and then I can define, what programs or what devices I want to look for under the network defined in the repository. Some issue here. Okay. So there are templates pre-configured for assets. The two most common include operating systems and server applications. So these will be any latest Windows, Linux, Unix operating systems. We also have the option to create custom asset lists. So basically, you could define it by type. We have static, we have static, DNS, watch list, LDAP, dynamic, and combination. So static would just be IP addresses, CIDR blocks, or an IP address range. DNS will just be a host name of your campus. That will be a .edu domain, I'm guessing. Watch list, so you can actually set IP addresses and networks to watch over that you suspect are malicious within your network and sort of use it as a way to isolate them. LDAP is just going to look for LDAP protocols. Dynamic and combination. I could define a combination of multiple assets together. Yeah, so I just went over this. An example of a static asset would be a subnet, a group of subnets, an IP range or IPv6 ranges, although once again, it's not recommended doing this. So when you define a static asset, it is a good idea to group similar devices together, perhaps by operating system, host names, or a common domain. So this is just an example of having a DNS asset list. And then you can also add a static asset list through a text file. All right, so once you have a vulnerability data, you can generate reports. So you head over to reports on top of reporting, and the reports page would appear. Now you do have some pre-built reports that Tenable provides. You could also add your own custom report. So this by CIS controls. I don't think we have any Windows 10 boxes in the network I just scanned, but I'm just gonna select this anyway. So here you have a brief description. You have small information about the chapters included in the reports, but it doesn't give you the entire outlook. So I'm going to select target all systems. Then you have more details about it here. So I'm going to select add, and that should appear under the reports menu. So, all right. So what this does is it configures the report, but it doesn't actually generate it. So to generate the report, you have to hit this play button here on the right. And then as with scans, you want to look at results. So here, you want to look at report results. Okay, so this is going to take a while. So I'm just going to download a pre-completed report, show it to you. Just a second. So this is how it looks like. It's very professional and it's great to provide to higher level management. So here you have your summary. It's going to tell you over what time frame vulnerabilities are found. You have your total current vulnerabilities. It tells you how many vulnerabilities you have that are exploitable. I wouldn't worry about median. I would only look at critical and high. You can see this by month, 6 months, and then per the top host with the vulnerabilities, you have a graph here that shows you how many they have on average. So you have more information specific to hosts. So this is useful for managing your devices and seeing where you need to patch up vulnerabilities. All right. So now I'm going to show you how to look at vulnerability data once we complete a scan. So I'm going to check back on the scan I just created. It's almost done. Okay. But I do have old data to work with, so we'll use that. So to look at vulnerability data from scans, you want to start at analysis from the nav bar and then go to vulnerabilities. And now, depending on what you select from the drop-down menu on the left, it's going to affect what you see here as results presented. So what this allows us to do is sort the discovered vulnerabilities or information by category. So if you want a high-level view of what's going on, we could change this from vulnerability summary to severity summary. So let's go ahead and find that. So here you can see the counts of the severity of the vulnerabilities have over the network I scanned. So another way we can do this is by network. So we also have our class summaries here, and then those counts would appear on the left side as well. So as you can see here, there are different types of summaries for different types of information. So whenever you start here by default, it's going to take you to your last selected option. So you want to keep that in mind. So usually you want to start at either severity or vulnerability summary. And from there, you can see the total number of vulnerabilities found across your network on the top right here. So here I have 223. Sometimes it's not always accurate, and then it will leave out a few. So you could have like 230, but it only showed 223. Usually it's not significant. It's not like you have 200 and it's only showing 50. So the next question we might have is, where are all these vulnerabilities located? What devices are they found on? So in this case, we look at an IP summary. So this is basically giving me vulnerability information by host, and where these hosts are located. So to filter out through this, what we can do is go to options, view settings. And I have different things I could select here. I could turn on things like DNS name. I think operating systems here. Yeah, operating systems is here. And then you just get rid of some things like total repository. And then I can filter through these. Just do critical and high. So now, as you can see, it added the DS and DNS name for some of, well, actually only 2 of them. It did add the OS information, so that's good. So here I can see this is a VMware server. So once you click on a vulnerability, you can get a more detailed information. So I just got to sort through these. Well, another way to filter is from this menu on the left. So here I just want to look at critical. And hit apply all. Let's take a look at this one. So when you're actually looking at a vulnerability, you have information such as synopsis and description. When was this vulnerability first discovered? When was it last observed? Let's see here, information about the host, MAC address, and obviously this will be in the repository of your college. We also have CVSS scoring here. Oh, here it is. So you have CVSS information here, and that could be useful. We also have more exploit information. So this would tell us that there is a patch available for this exploit, and you would have to manually install it onto this device. Now here you could see we have a plugin output. This is important because it tells us details about the interaction the Nessus scanner had with our target here. And then it's going to tell us why this vulnerability exists. And what it's telling us here is that we're using outdated firmware. It's using 1.20 and should be on 2.53 for, I believe this is HP integrated lights out. Yeah. That's it. Let me know if you have questions. You can email me.
Yeah, so I think we ran over a little bit of time, I think. So if somebody has any question related to this, you can